Coruscant's level 1 is the lowest layer of a city 5,127 levels deep, and what sits down there is not what the record has ever made it out to be. The top is sunlight, marble, and senators. On a planet covered by reference books, maps, and cutaway diagrams, the lowest layer of the city is the one location the stories keep refusing to show. What the official record establishes, what the older tales added, and what was simply filled in over the years turn out to be three very different things. Somewhere far above that bottom, on a single mountain peak the city never managed to cover, the original ground still lies exposed. It is the only piece of that first world anyone can still stand on. From the top of Coruscant, the city falls away in thousands of layers, each one built on the roof of the city beneath it. This is an ecumenopolis, a single urban sprawl that covers an entire planet from pole to pole. The top levels hold the Jedi Temple, the Senate, and the wealthiest beings in the galaxy. The deeper the layers go, the poorer and darker they get, until they stop being places anyone chooses to live. One canon reference book put the depth at 5,217 levels. The number was wrong. The real figure is 5,127. The 2016 reference book Star Wars Complete Locations listed the wrong one, and the error spread through secondary sources faster than the correction did. Later releases quietly fixed it back to 5,127, the number now treated as official. It sounds like a small detail, and it is, until you notice how often the wrong number still gets repeated as fact. That depth took an almost unimaginable stretch of time to build. According to the canon reference work Star Wars Build the Millennium Falcon, construction of the lowest levels began roughly 100,000 years before the rise of the Empire, rising from the original soil upward. Every layer added another roof over the one below it. The wealthy moved higher towards the light, and the oldest layers sank deeper into the dark. Holding a city this tall upright is a problem most beings never think about, and the answer to it is buried at the bottom. The foundations of Coruscant's largest towers do not rest on the surface. The older legend sourcebooks describe them diving deep into the planet's crust, some of them weighing billions of tons, anchoring the weight of thousands of levels stacked overhead. Near the planet's core sit massive power relay stations that fed the entire city for ages, the kind of infrastructure that has to exist at the very bottom precisely because everything above depends on it. The deepest layers are not just slums and ruins. They hold the whole city up. What keeps the metropolis standing is the skeleton at the bottom, and almost no one who lives in the towers above ever sees it. Long before the Senate, before the Jedi Temple, before the Republic itself, Coruscant was an ordinary planet. The legend sourcebook Coruscant and the Core Worlds describes a world that once held oceans and mountain ranges, all of it slowly paved over as the city climbed. The current canon nods at the same history in the novel The Living Force, which brings back one of the planet's lost seas. The surface most beings know is artificial, stacked on top of a natural world that no longer sees daylight. Everything above is younger than the ground it was built on. A bounty hunter sits in a dim cantina far below the skyline, where the air is thick and the law rarely reaches. Fugitives move through crowded markets without a single official noticing. The canon animated series The Clone Wars returned to these lower levels again and again, following hunters, criminals, and Jedi who needed to disappear. The most famous of these layers is level 1313. The canon databank describes it as a gathering point for bounty hunters, gangsters, and anyone else with a reason to stay out of sight. Just above it, level 1312 appears in the Clone Wars as a rundown district, the kind of place a hunted Jedi could vanish into without leaving a trail. These levels feel like the bottom of the world. By the time of the Clone Wars, the deepest level the saga actually shows is level 1313, and even that, by the city's own scale, sits closer to the top than the bottom. Deeper still lies the Works, a sprawling industrial zone beneath the Senate District, a graveyard of abandoned factories where machines still grind out smoke and waste long after the workers left. Beneath even these districts sat the Crimson Corridor, one of the oldest and most lawless stretches of the city, sitting within about 10 kilometers of the Jedi Temple itself. The order that guarded the galaxy lived a short distance above a place its members rarely entered. The deeper the city went, the less anyone in charge wanted to know about it. The crime networks ran open operations through these levels. The authorities mostly contained them rather than cleaning them out. The Canon databank notes that the underworld police wore masks unsettling enough that even the records inside the story are unsure whether the officers beneath them were living beings, droids, or something in between. Order down there was thin, strange, and barely enforced. Yet for all the danger these districts carried, every one of them was still thousands of layers above the true floor. For all its dangers, the underworld has one thing the bottom does not. It is still alive. The underworld has people in it. It has markets, cantinas, gangs, even a strange masked version of law. Generations live and die in those levels without ever seeing daylight. It is the poorest and most dangerous part of Coruscant, but it is still part of the city, still inhabited, still somewhere a story can happen. On the other hand, Level 1 is none of that. It is not the worst neighborhood at the bottom of the ladder. It is the ground the ladder was bolted into, a place the city stopped using so long ago that it fell out of memory entirely. Nothing lives there at all. The underworld stops well short of the bottom. In the canon comic Star Wars Adventures, a young Leia Organa takes Amilyn Holdo into the layers of Coruscant to teach her to fly a speeder, and Holdo dives down and down until she tries to reach level 4 and is told it cannot be done. Level 5 is as low as anyone can go, home to smuggler haunts and beings who want to drop off the grid entirely, the last layer where life still holds on. Below it, the city changes from a place people avoid into a place people cannot reach. The lowest 4 levels, from level 4 down to the ground, are off limits. They're not dangerous or lawless, they're simply out of reach. Past level 5, the layers are not poor neighborhoods or rough corridors. They're blanks on the map. Heroes, criminals, and senators cross Coruscant constantly, yet the lowest of them stay in the thousands, the line holding at level 5 with nothing below it described at all. The boundary holds not because of a wall anyone can point to, but because every account, without explanation, stops at the same depth. If even the people who live there agree that no one goes below level 5, then something down there is being avoided. Every source that names level 1 at all reaches for the same word, uninhabitable. In the current canon and in the older continuity alike, that word comes up again and again, and the only variation anyone offers is a single alternative, inhospitable. Between them, those two words are the full record on the lowest layer of the most documented planet in the galaxy, a world whose upper towers have been mapped, diagrammed, and cataloged down to individual skylanes. The bottom of Coruscant is where descriptions diminish. Much of what surrounds level 1 was never recorded at all. It was filled in around the edges of those two words. The most common claim is that the level has no breathable air, repeated in summaries as settled fact, though no novel, comic, episode, or reference book states it. The idea grew out of that single word, uninhabitable, and hardened into something the sources never said. The same goes for the image of total darkness. What the record does support is broader and quieter. The deep levels of Coruscant have not seen sunlight in thousands of years, lit only by whatever artificial glow remains. The airless, lightless tomb most people picture is mostly inference stacked on a single word. The better question is not what fills level 1 now, but what the city left behind on its way up. The clearest answer is the building itself. As the city climbed, whole construction zones were closed off and forgotten when new layers rose on top, leaving shafts and tunnels that led nowhere anyone remembers. The works, that abandoned factory belt below the Senate district, was only the visible edge of this. Far deeper sit the parts of the city that were never meant to be seen again. Broken machinery and structures stacked and sealed in place across 100,000 years of building. The deep city is not empty space. It is everything the surface stopped needing and never bothered to remove. The dark held more than silent machinery. On the far side of the planet, opposite the bright towers of the government district, the legend sources place a region sometimes called the most dangerous place on Coruscant. It is an old industrial wasteland where, according to those accounts, bands of malfunctioning droids were rumored to roam free, cut loose from any master and left to their own logic in the dark. Whether the rumors were ever fully true, the lower city had clearly become a dumping ground, not just for waste, but for the machines the surface no longer wanted, left to break down or keep working with no purpose at all. In the older Legends accounts, an entire ecosystem took hold in the deep levels, enough that an arm of the Coruscant government was funded mainly to keep its predators confined below. away from the people living above. One of those creatures was the Chthon, an eyeless pale thing descended from beings driven into the dark so long ago that generations of chemical runoff and reactor heat had changed them into something the surface would not recognize. One deep sector did not decline over generations, but was lost in a single afternoon. The legend's record describes the Dacho district, a deep industrial sector lost to the worst accident in the city's history, centuries before the Clone Wars. A chemical release swept through the complex and ended more than 300,000 lives trapped inside it. What was left was closed off and left empty, a dead zone buried in the lower city that the planet simply built past. The deeper layers were not only home to strange creatures. In places, they were a tomb. Not everything the city buried was machinery, and one of the oldest things down there was never meant to be found at all. The deepest secret on Coruscant does not sit at the bottom of the city, but beneath its most famous building. The canon novel Tarkin establishes that the Jedi Temple was raised over an ancient Sith shrine, a dark side site so old that it had been abandoned for close to 5,000 years, deliberately capped by the Jedi who built their halls on top of it to hold its power down. The shrine sat in a sealed chamber far below the temple's sublevels, leaking its influence upward for 1,000 years, while the Order above never spoke of it. Palpatine knew. After the temple became his palace, he had the shrine dug back out and used it as his own private sanctuary, a hidden Sith heart beneath the seat of the galaxy, kept down by the same instinct that built the rest of the planet. All of this still sits above level 1. The bottom is not where things live, but where the city forgot what it was built on top of. Far below the deepest corridor anyone maps, in that same Star Wars adventure story, Leia and Holdo look out over the endless metal sprawl, and one of them recalls an old saying, that Coruscant was once an ordinary world of oceans and mountains before it became this, stacked down to a place called Level 0. Canon does not end at Level 1. It quietly places a floor underneath it, and that floor is not a floor at all. The lowest layers were not always dead. Current canon records confirm that around 100,000 years before the Empire, the first levels of Coruscant rose from the original soil before the ground ever became a single city. As the city climbed upward over the ages, that ground was sealed beneath new construction, turning into ruins no one would ever visit again. Level 0 is the ground itself, and Level 1 is the layer the city is stacked on top of. The bottom of Coruscant is not a basement, but a buried world. That world had a history before any of the layers existed. In Legends, the older source books describe a planet that was once mostly ocean. Its water was drained away through underground caverns and stored in vast reservoirs deep below, leaving only the polar ice caps and a single artificial sea on the surface. The mountain ranges were covered over the same way, swallowed level by level. Those records also name the planet's first peoples, among them the Zhel and the Tong, whose ancient struggle belongs to the era before the Republic was even an idea. The same legend's histories reach back further still, to a time roughly 27,000 years before the Empire, when an ancient power called the Rakata is said to have conquered Coruscant and enslaved the people living on it, long before the world became a city at all. Everything the galaxy built on Coruscant, every tower and temple and Senate chamber, rests on the grave of the planet that came before. And there is one place where that buried world still breaks the surface. The highest peak of an ancient mountain range was never covered. The city simply built around it, level by level, until a single point of bare rock stood exposed at the top of the metropolis, ringed by a plaza where visitors could reach out and touch it. The peak everyone treats as a monument is the last visible piece of the original Coruscant. Every senator in the chamber, every Jedi in the temple, every clone marching through the streets stood on top of a world they never knew was there. That world is still down there, held beneath the weight of everything that replaced it, and the burying never really stopped. When the Empire rose, it took a sanctuary on the planet's surface, a reserve granted to displaced people. It raised the refuge to build a hidden research site for a weapon project and relocate the inhabitants who had lived there. The instinct was the same one that built the city in the first place. The Empire covered what came before, raised something new on top of it, and turned its attention away from the depths, exactly as every ruler of Coruscant had done. Which is why the single exposed peak at the top of the city matters so much. It is the only place where the original world still reaches daylight. The rest of it is level 1, and everything beneath. The bottom of Coruscant was never a slum or a ruin waiting to be explored. It was a planet sealed under 100,000 years of construction by a civilization that never stopped building and never once looked back. Level 1 was never meant to be lived in, because Level 1 was never meant to be the bottom. The bottom is the world that was there first. The galaxy treats Coruscant as the center of everything, the bright capital where power lives. The truth runs the other way, downward, into the dark the capital was built to forget. This same planet hides one more secret far below the skyline, a hidden project buried under the city by the one man who ruled it all. And beyond Coruscant, another world you thought you knew, a desert most fans dismiss as empty, hides something just as old and far more dangerous beneath the sand.